Welcome to True White Allies, where we celebrate the forgotten history of white anti-racists so their stories can inspire you to take action today. This episode tells the story of Eliza Wigham, a Scotswoman who protested against the church accepting money from slave owners and the Contagious Diseases Acts.
In the 1800s, a group of determined Scottish women journeyed to the top of a cliff in Edinburgh on a mission. With their trowels in hand, they dug into the grass and wrote a simple but clear message: send the money back. The women were members of the Edinburgh Ladies Emancipation Society and led by a woman named Eliza Wigham to the Salisbury Crags. The Salisbury Crags are a series of cliffs in Holyrood Park, a royal park in Edinburgh, Scotland. Eliza Wigham was a women's rights advocate and abolitionist. She was born in 1820 in Edinburgh to a Quaker family. Her mother and two of her siblings died when she was young. Her father remarried a woman named Jane Smeal from Glasgow, and she became her stepmother. Jane Wigham was also an abolitionist, and she and Eliza worked closely together through the years. They formed anti-slavery societies for women in Scotland and campaigned to end slavery. They also had connections with other anti-slavery organizations in the US. In 1846, Eliza Wigham invited Frederick Douglass to Scotland to speak. Frederick Douglass was a man who escaped slavery, and he became one of the most outstanding leaders of the abolitionist movement in the US. He was a writer, speaker, and advocate for women's rights. During his time in Scotland, the Wighams and many others were protesting against the Free Church of Scotland. There were signs and placards in the streets of Edinburgh saying, "Send the money back." The church had accepted donations from slave owners in the US, and the protesters wanted them to send back the money. In this spirit of protest, Eliza Wigham and the women from the Edinburgh Ladies Emancipation Society went to the Salisbury Crags to carve the message into the grounds.
It's said that Frederick Douglass accompanied them on this trip. Either way, it was original, poetic, and they picked a very symbolic location.
In 1863, Eliza Wigham wrote a book, The Antislavery Cause in America and Its Martyrs. This was in the middle of the American Civil War, and there were fears that the British government would support the Confederacy.
Just in case you didn't know, those were the people that didn't want slavery to end, and that was one of the reasons for the war.
Eliza Wigham's goal was to encourage the British government not to support the Confederacy by describing the horrors of slavery and sharing the history of the anti-slavery movement.
So I'm not sure how effective this was, because some of my research tells me that the British government was neutral on the matter. But then some businesses could supply the Confederacy with resources that helped their efforts. So who knows? Either way, the Confederacy lost the war, so yay!
The Edinburgh Ladies Emancipation Society ran until 1870, long after other anti-slavery organizations disbanded. Eliza Wigham was also a women's rights advocate. She was one of the women that protested against the Contagious Diseases Act. In 1857, a report investigated the health of soldiers in the army. Another follow-up report on their sexual health was written in 1862, which found that the soldiers were getting sexually transmitted infections. Sex workers were blamed for this, and 3 acts were passed in 1864, 1866, and 1869. They were called the Contagious Diseases Acts. According to the acts, in some towns, any woman suspected of being a sex worker could be stopped and made to undergo an inspection to check if she had an STI. If she said no to the inspection, she could be arrested and taken to court. If she agreed to the examination and had an infection, she could be imprisoned in a hospital.
This is why when people talk about going back to the good old days, I think to myself, what good old days? Those were dark times for Black people, women, gay people, disabled people. I quite like the 21st century. Slavery isn't legal anymore, and the police can inspect my private parts for infections.
The Ladies' National Association for the Repeal of the Contagious Diseases Act was formed in protest. Eliza Wigham was one of the executive committee members. In 1870, they published a protest against the acts in the newspaper. In the document, they opposed the acts for many reasons. It gave the police unchecked power over women, penalised the wrong sex as the cause of the problem, and threatened freedom and liberty.
It also just wasn't an effective way to curb disease. I guess blame the women often isn't an effective strategy.
In 1886, the acts were repealed. In 1888, Jane Wigham died after a long illness. Eliza moved to Dublin in Ireland in her later years, and she passed away there in 1899. So what can white people who want to be allies learn from Eliza Wigham? Pay attention to where your money is going and how it's being spent. If you support a charity, when last did you look at their annual report to see how they spent their money? Many companies have corporate social responsibility programs. So find out where your employer is donating their money. You can even suggest that they contribute to organizations working on racial equality. Hi, I'm Nathan Banks, and if you enjoyed watching this video, please like it and share it with 2 white people you think would benefit from watching it.